Richard Sharpe. Soldier, leader, hero. He is a man born in the gutter, but forged in the fire of the Napoleonic Wars. Played by the great Sean Bean, Richard Sharpe is the main protagonist in the beloved TV adaptation of the Bernard Cornwell novels. However, Sharpe is more than just a swashbuckling officer. He is a character defined by grit, ambition, and a deep sense of loyalty, battling not just the French, but also the rigid class system of the British Army. This analysis will explore Sharpe's character growth, motivations, key differences between the TV adaptation and the novels, and his evolution throughout the series. Richard Sharpe was the creation of the writer Bernard Cornwell. Cornwell enjoyed C.S. Forester's Horatio Hornblower novels, which depict a Royal Navy officer's career from midshipman to Admiral of the Fleet. He couldn't, however, find a similar series for the British Army, so he decided to write one himself. Cornwell states, Richard Sharpe was born on a winter's night in 1980. It was in London, in a basement flat in Cornwall Street, not far from Westbourne Grove. I have decided to marry an American, and, for a myriad of reasons, it was going to be easier if I lived in America. But I could not get a work permit, and so, airily, I decided to earn a living as a writer. Love makes us into idiots. Struggling to come up with a name as distinctive as Horatio Hornblower, he used a placeholder based on the rugby union player Richard Sharpe. Eventually, he kept it, just adding an E. The author had intended to write 11 novels, the same number as in the Hornblower series, ending with Sharpe's Waterloo, but later changed his mind and continued writing. The first entry to the series, Sharpe's Eagle, was published in 1981, with the last book, as of today's date, being Sharpe's Command. As a historical fiction, many of the events depicted in the novel were based on true historical events, with Sharpe being central to the action, such as the assault on Badajoz, and of course, the Battle of Waterloo. However, as we are all well aware, the Prince of Orange wasn't shot and wounded by Richard Sharpe at Waterloo. In reality, he was likely wounded by a French skirmisher. Whether you're an avid reader and watcher of the Sharpe series, or just an occasional consumer, it is all too easy to forget that Bernard Cornwell had given the character a full life, rather than just an episodic one. From what we know about Sharpe's childhood and backstory, our hero was born in 1777 to a prostitute residing in Cat Lane, London, and an unknown father. Sharpe remembers only dark hair and a voice in the darkness of his mother. When Sharpe was about 3, his mother was killed, leaving him an orphan. With no other known relatives to claim him, he was eventually deposited in a founding home at Brewhouse Lane, Wapping. There, the children under 6 were assigned to pick old tar-coated ship cables which left their fingers bloody and abused. They liked Christmas because it was one day a year where there was no work, the one day the home was heated, and they were given minced tripe and hard-boiled eggs to eat. At about the age of 8 or 9, when he was sold to a chimney sweep, he ran away. He was found by Maggie Joyce in the rookery of St. Giles, London, who found work for a nimble child. He becomes a thief and housebreaker. St. Giles was grim and dark, a place of desperation, where kill or be killed was an everyday occurrence. Maggie was the first woman he slept with, and the first he killed for, both before his 13th birthday. After killing one of the lords of St. Giles for beating Maggie, she sent him away and he fled to Yorkshire. He worked at a coaching inn in Yorkshire for over 2 years, where he assisted the innkeeper in snaffling luggage and dealing in stolen goods. He called the man a right bastard, and he eventually killed him in a knife fight over a local girl. With this act, he was given a choice: prison or the King's Shilling. The King's Shilling was a term used for someone who enlists in the British Army. It would be called taking the Queen's Shilling if the sovereign at the time was female. It was offered to convicts as an alternative to prison or penal transportation. Sharpe accepted the King's Shilling and joined the King's 33rd Regiment of Foot in 1793. Richard Sharpe is described as a 6-foot tanned man with black hair, blue eyes, and a scar on his cheek, giving him a broodingly savage face. So, when the casting call went out for actors to play Sharpe, a plethora of talented men came to the fray. However, the person picked to play him on screen was not originally Sean Bean. It was in fact Paul McGann, who does look more accurate to the description of the character by Bernard Cornwell. However, McGann ruptured his cruciate ligament playing football a few days into the shooting of Sharpe's rifles in the Ukraine. Due to a misdiagnosis, he continued for weeks, unwittingly causing more damage. This caused the filmmakers to locate a new man to play Sharpe. Along came Sean Bean. Since then, we never looked back, and Sean Bean is now synonymous with the character of Richard Sharpe. While the TV adaptation retains his outsider status, it simplifies some of his backstory. For example, Sharpe's early life in India, including his service under Sir Arthur Wellesley, is largely omitted, reducing some of the depth of his formative years. The essence of a man who fights against class prejudice and earns respect through merit remains intact. Sharpe begins the series as a capable but somewhat rough-edged soldier, who struggles with authority, especially the aristocratic officers who look down on him. Over the course of the series, he matures into a seasoned leader, balancing his natural defiance with a sense of duty and responsibility. His personal growth is shaped by several key relationships and events. We first meet Sharpe in Sharpe's Rifles, a tough, no-nonsense sergeant promoted to lieutenant by Wellington himself after saving his life. He is an outsider, looked down upon by the upper-class officers, who see him no more than some low-class ragamuffin. For his early motivations, survival and proving he belongs are the key factors. Sharpe's ambition is fueled by his working-class background and a desperate need for recognition. Sharpe is not a conventional officer. He wasn't born into privilege, and unlike many of his aristocratic peers, he earns his rank through raw merit and battlefield effectiveness. One of the earliest struggles Sharpe faces is the British class system. Officers like Sir Henry Simson treat him with disdain, seeing his battlefield commission as an insult to the aristocratic ranks. He leads by example, always at the front of the charge, willing to fight alongside his men rather than commanding from a safe distance, like a Henry Simson for example. His leadership is built up on trust and respect, rather than blind obedience, which is why the chosen men, his elite group of riflemen, would follow him to the ends of the earth. Unlike many officers who see their men as expendable tools, Sharpe understands the cost of war on a deeply personal level. His men are not just soldiers, they are his comrades, brothers in arms, and people who he shares victories and losses with. His ability to think outside the rigid structures of the military hierarchy allows him to outmaneuver both his enemies and his incompetent superiors. In Sharpe's Eagle, for example, when faced with an insufferable commander who endangers his men, Sharpe takes decisive action, proving that leadership is earned on the battlefield, not bestowed by noble birth. Betrayal also becomes a recurring theme, from his own allies turning on him to false accusations of treason. Sharpe learns that even within his own ranks, he can't trust everyone. Each betrayal leaves a scar, making Sharpe more hardened and more cynical. He doesn't just battle on the field though, he has conflict with various antagonists through the series. A hero is often defined by his enemies, and Sharpe faces some of the most ruthless villains. For example, Obadiah Hageswell, the sadistic and unkillable sergeant, represents Sharpe's worst nightmare from his past. A cruel tormentor who exploits the weak and revels in chaos. Hageswell's repeated clashes with Sharpe pushes him to his limits, forcing him to confront not just a physical threat, but a deeply personal one. Then there's Colonel Leroux, the French intelligence officer, a deadly foe who matches Sharpe's cunning and skill. Their duel is not just about brute force, but also strategic wit, testing Sharpe's ability to outthink a calculating opponent. And of course there is Duco, a master manipulator, using lies and deception rather than combat, because I think we all know, if it came down to a fistfight, Sharpe would absolutely destroy him. Duco's schemes lead to one of Sharpe's lowest moments, being framed for murder. Luckily he escapes this folly and proved his innocence. Each villain forces Sharpe to evolve, teaching him that battles aren't just always won with sword, but with resilience and intellect. As some of the most defining aspects of his character, unlike the traditional romantic hero, Sharpe's relationships often serve as a reflection of his emotional struggles and the toll war has taken on him. His love for Teresa Moreno, a fierce and independent Spanish guerrilla leader, is one of the purest relationships he experiences. Teresa is unlike many of the other women in his life, strong-willed, capable in battle, and unafraid to challenge him. Her presence softens Sharpe, allowing him to briefly experience a different kind of life. However, her tragic death at the hands of Hageswell and Sharpe's enemy is a moment that alters him deeply, reinforcing the notion that happiness is fleeting and that war consumes everything it touches. Jane Gibbons, in contrast, represents the deception and betrayal that often accompanies Sharpe's interactions with the upper class. Initially, she seems like the perfect match, cultured, attractive, and offering him a semblance of stability. However, as their marriage progresses, Jane's true nature is revealed. She steals his wealth and abandons him, leaving him emotionally and financially broken. This betrayal cuts deeper than any wound Sharpe has suffered in battle, cementing his mistrust of the aristocracy and the notion that love, for a man like him, is always conditional. Then there's Lucille, the French woman and widow, offers Sharpe something no other woman has: peace. She helps him restore his honour in Sharpe's revenge. Unlike Teresa, who fights alongside him, or Jane, who deceives him, Lucille represents a life beyond the war. Their relationship grows slowly, built on mutual understanding rather than immediate passion. Through her, Sharpe finally allows himself to believe in the future outside of the battlefield. Although there was somewhat of a conflict between him and Fredrickson about Lucille. Sharpe is not a flawless hero. He is violent, quick-tempered, and often driven by revenge. Yet he does operate by a strict moral code that separates him from the true villains of the series. He despises corruption and incompetence, especially in officers who use their rank for personal gain rather than the good of their men. This hatred manifests in his confrontations with figures like Sir Henry Simmerson and Obadiah Hageswell. While Sharpe is willing to bend the rules when necessary, he does so for justice rather than personal ambition. At times, he is willing to kill outside of battle, something that sets him apart from the more restrained military officers of his time. In Sharpe's honour, when he is falsely accused of treason and is sent to be executed, he operates in the shadows, using his skill not just for survival, but to set things right. His pragmatic approach to justice makes him more of an anti-hero than a traditional noble soldier. His inability to trust is another defining flaw. The betrayals he suffers, from superior officers, fellow soldiers, and even lovers, leave him guarded and suspicious. By the time we reach Sharpe's Waterloo, he's no longer the ambitious sergeant looking to prove himself. He's a battle-worn leader, respected by men and commanders alike. He's fought in countless battles, lost friends and lovers, and seen the best and worst of humanity. Sharpe's journey is one of transformation, ambition giving way to duty, anger tempted by loss, and a soldier learning that war isn't his only calling. His legacy isn't just in his victories, but in the men who have followed him, the enemies who respected him, and the life he has finally allowed himself to have. Bernard Cornwell was reportedly very pleased with Sean Bean's portrayal of Richard Sharpe in the TV adaptation, finding it as superb and a perfect fit, even modelling Sharpe on Bean's image in later books. Cornwell states, "It is a foolish author who complains about his or her books being translated onto television or film. I never expected the producers to slavishly copy the books. They couldn't. So I was quite ready for any changes they made, except in Sharpe's Gold, which left me gobsmacked, and I was utterly delighted that it was to be Sean Bean." Cornwell admired the grittiness of Bean's portrayal, stating that Bean looked right, he sounds right, and so far as I'm concerned, is right. So when it comes to the differences between the novel and the series regarding Sharpe, Cromwell was quite liberal in letting the filmmakers take some creative liberties. The Sharpe novels and TV series share the same core traits: bravery, leadership, and resilience, but there are key differences in characterization, relationships, and the overall tone. As we mentioned before, the look of Sharpe is different. This would have been different had Paul McGann not get injured. In the novels, Sharpe is described as a tall, dark-haired and scarred. He has a rough, dangerous look, and a brutal past in the slums of London. His physicality is often emphasised. He's strong and imposing. In the TV series played by Sean Bean, Sharpe is blonde, shorter, and lacks many of the physical scars described in the books. However, Bean captures Sharpe's intensity and charisma so well. Sean Bean doesn't have to come across as overly physical. It's his mannerisms that make him such a well-acted character. When it comes to his characterizations and personality, in the novels Sharpe is more ruthless. He's also more foul-mouthed and rough-edged, fitting his brutal upbringing. In the TV series, while he is still tough, the show softens Sharpe's personality. He is more of a traditional hero, gruff but honourable. His violent tendencies and moral ambiguity are toned down, but he still holds the core essence of the character. Sharpe has had no end of enemies and rivalries. In the novel, Sharpe's enemies are often crueler and more intelligent. Obadiah Hakeswell, for example, is even more sinister in the books, and Pierre Ducos is a major antagonist who schemes against him over multiple books in more depth. In the TV show, some villains are often simplified or appear in fewer episodes. Hakeswell is a standout for this, but others, like Ducos, are less developed compared to the books. Although some would say this is understandable considering the constraints of television, and because you don't have much time to work with characters. Combat and violence are prevalent in Sharpe. The novels portray the battles as detailed and brutal. Sharpe is a strategic fighter, using dirty tricks and ambush tactics. His kills are often described in very graphic detail. The TV show, however, is limited by budget and TV constraints. Battles are smaller in scale, and the action is less bloody. Sharpe's Waterloo is a big example of this. Imagine how epic this episode would have been if it had the amount of extras in it that the 1917 film Waterloo had. Sharpe is always thinking about his future. This equates to his need for constant promotion. The novels have Sharpe's rise through the ranks more detailed, showing how difficult it is for a common soldier to become an officer. His career is shaped by his tactical brilliance, but also his ability to survive political intrigue. The TV show has his promotion happen more quickly, and there is less focus on the systemic class struggles he faces. He does face these struggles, and you do see it in the show, but not in as much detail as the novel. And that is the trade-off when it comes from adapting a novel to a TV show. Do you add more action, or do you add more drama? I think when it comes to it, it strikes a good balance. Despite its differences, it could potentially be said that Sean Bean made Bernard Cornwell Sharpe more valuable. Richard Sharpe's legacy extends far beyond the battlefield. The Sharpe TV series brought Bernard Cornwell's novels to life in a way very few historical dramas ever could, creating a gritty, realistic portrayal of the Napoleonic Wars that still hold up today. But what truly made the series iconic was Sean Bean's performance. Sharpe is often compared to other military figures in fiction, but he stands apart due to his background and approach to war. Unlike Horatio Hornblower, who is introspective, well-educated and burdened by self-doubt, Sharpe is a man of action. Hornblower is a strategist who battles his own insecurities as much as his enemies, while Sharpe relies on instinct and raw survival skills. Where Hornblower is diplomatic and restrained, Sharpe is aggressive and unafraid to break the rules to achieve victory. Bean made Sharpe his own. His raw intensity, northern grit, and natural charisma turned Sharpe into more than just another soldier. He became a symbol of resilience, leadership, and honour. Bean's portrayal cemented Sharpe as one of television's greatest war heroes. Sharpe continues to have a loyal fan base. The series has remained in constant discussion online, with fans debating the best battles, most memorable villains, and how Sean Bean's portrayal compares to the literary Sharpe. The novels are still widely read, with new generations discovering the books and following Sharpe's journey from the gutters of London to the fields of Waterloo. Bean's legacy as Sharpe is so strong that when fans discuss his best roles, Sharpe is always mentioned alongside likes of Boromir or Ned Stark. The influence of Sharpe continues in modern storytelling, with many historical dramas borrowing elements from the series. Sharpe's legacy remains alive in fiction today. Whether you know him from the books or the series, one thing is certain: Richard Sharpe is a character that endures. So what do you think? Is Sharpe Sean Bean's greatest role? Which episode or moment stands out for you the most? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you over the hills and far away.